Let's examine this complete Mitchell's New General Atlas in a period binding like so. The covers are embossed in blind and stamped in gilt, leather spine and tips, well worn, scuffed like this with some chipping at the head of the spine. The front joint here is split, and this front cover is now quite loose. It's attached, but it's loose. And in time, the atlas is handled enough, it might detach. So it's worth mentioning, but it's not terribly important given that the atlas itself is a scarce issue, 1875, very uncommon issue, and it's complete and it's beautiful internally. So this sort of 19th century atlas often displays binding issues. In fact, it's quite the exception to find this atlas without binding issues. We see here the lithograph maps begin. All of the hand color is original, and there are all kinds of interesting features on various maps, such as this hooked Lake Torrens here, this U.S. exploring expedition in the 1840s along the southern continent of Antarctica, and tracks across the oceans of explorers. We see here map of the United States, and then there's this one. I'll flip through the entire atlas like this to show you how it survives. Any flaws or faults in it are rather minor and easy to overlook or forgive. We see here the state of the railroads going across the country. At this point, this one was still incomplete. That's why it's a dotted line. Yeah. And then we get to this map of Maine here, a map of New Hampshire and Vermont. And then we get to this double-page map here of Massachusetts. Boston here is we're about an hour north where we're filming this and where this online business is located. Here's Connecticut. And here we have Boston itself. In fact, was just there this weekend at the Museum of Fine Arts. Yes, that's a splendid museum. Okay, and here we have New York with these city insets around it. And yes, here's a beautiful double-page plan of New York City and Brooklyn. And then we've got this plan here, this map of Pennsylvania split here at the base of the centerfold. No big deal, no loss, with these city plan insets here, followed by this very pleasing large double-page Philadelphia city plan. And here we have these two states, three states actually, on this sheet, followed by this plan of Baltimore. And here's a beautiful city plan of Washington. Notice the decorative floral grape cluster and vine borders. Mitchell maps can often be dated by their evolving borders. In fact, Dick Fitch, one of the great American map dealers of late 20th century, gave a lecture just about that very topic. It's probably recorded somewhere for sure. And here we have a nice double-page map. What's interesting about these maps in the Mitchell Atlases is what makes them interesting from a collecting perspective is that all of the counties within the United States are rapidly evolving in the second half of the 19th century. And so these maps often capture that as a snapshot, the evolution of counties prior to the formation of some or shortly after the formation of some. And so they're interesting from a historical perspective in that way. They're not all the same, is what I'm saying, is that if you had this atlas from 1860, say 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, like so, each atlas would, in fact, the maps would be different and the details would be different. And that's the reason people often will collect variant issues. Having one is not really the same thing as having all of them. And some of them are very scarce, and the later they get, the scarcer they become. I think the distribution, this is a nice map here of Texas, the distribution of the atlas must have declined, and the number printed must have slowly declined as well, and so they become scarcer the later they get. In general, Illinois, Chicago, nice city plan there, and Iowa with Missouri. Here we see St. Louis. This is particularly true, what I was just saying about western locations as well. any place west of the Mississippi, especially at this date. Oh, there's a nice map of Detroit. Is rapidly evolving very quickly, and that's what's captured especially well in atlases and maps by Mitchell at this time. Here's a very nice transitional map here of these western states, including Colorado and Dakota still undivided. Here's Utah and Nevada. You'll notice virtually every single map is absolutely clean. There's no staining, no ink marks, no anything. It's a very pleasing example internally. And in fact, externally it's clean. It's just the leather has dried. This is a nice transitional map as well. Here's a great map of California with a wonderful large inset of San Francisco. It's a great map by itself. And here is Alaska, ceded by Russia, right there, after we paid them 3 cents an acre or something. So here's the Caribbean with an inset, large inset of the Sandwich Islands, Hawaii, and there's Bermuda, and Panama Railroad there, inset. Here's a map of just the island of Cuba. Here is South America with regional maps of the various countries, like so. Then we get into Europe, followed by England and Wales, Ireland, Scotland, France, Spain, Portugal, and then we get into the Scandinavian countries, Russia, Holland, Denmark, and we get into Prussia and the German states, and here we get into southern Europe, like this, Empire of Austria there, Italy, so on. We come across now to Asia, Arabia. This shows the sea route distances. And here we have Persia and Arabia, like this, and Afghanistan and Turkey, followed by this nice map of Palestine and the Holy Land with an inset of Jerusalem. And here we have India, Tibet, China, Southeast Asia, like so, followed by Oceania. There's that hooked Lake Torrens. It's an apocryphal. It's actually not that shape. It's actually a lake. Here's another inset of the Sandwich Islands. Here we have a nice map of Africa, interesting internal details, unknown interior there. We get to this now, this table. Here's a list of the post offices around the United States. It goes on for numerous pages like this. And here we have an appendix. Then here's a population tables of territories: Colorado, Arizona, Washington Territory, Utah. All these are territories still at this date. And here we have more. It continues on, various tables like so. Mountains of the world, rivers of the world compared with their heights. We get to the purple end papers like this. Just a very pleasing example of a very uncommon Mitchell Atlas from 1875. And it is available now online from me, Brian DeMambro.